Chair Rose, we are now on YouTube Live.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Susan Rose, and I am Chair of the Elmhurst Zoning and Planning Commission, and we will now begin our regularly scheduled meeting of the Zoning and Planning Commission for the City of Elmhurst. In accordance to the guidelines set out by the Governor of Illinois, we are observing a different set of protocols than we would in a live meeting. And the first thing to do is I need to check to make sure everyone can hear me. So I'll first go to the applicant in the applicant room. Can you hear me? What? Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's go to the public comment room. Can you hear me in the public comment room?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
All right. Commissioner McCoy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Uditsky, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Emily Egan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Commissioner Snyder, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Commissioner Garland, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Court reporter Kiki Andropoulos, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Commissioner Pittman, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Commissioner Burns, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Great. Commissioner Callaway, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you, Chair Rose.
Ask others. Do I need to ask everyone individually? Okay. Let me go back then. Mr. Daniel, can you hear me?
I can, Chairman Rose. Thank you.
Mr. Diamond, can you hear me? Yeah, I can't hear you because you're muted. Can you please?
Yes, Chairman Rose, I can hear you.
Great, thank you. City Attorney Acker, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Jerry Buss's iPad, can you hear me?
Identify yourself.
Yes, I can. Randy Buss speaking.
Randy Buss, thank you. Gwen, can you hear me?
I can hear you, thank you.
And then I have someone at KMSG Blair. Can you please identify yourself and let me know if you can hear me?
Yes, my name is Ken Blair and my wife Sarah Blair is here with me as well. And we can hear you.
Excellent. Welcome, Ken and Sarah. Okay. Thomas Kent, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Lauren, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Karen Heil, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Excellent. Yes. Okay. Someone by the name of Kevin, Kevin's iPad, can you hear me? Can you please identify yourself? Can you please identify yourself?
Yes, I can. Kevin Haig.
Okay, thank you. And okay, let me go to the next screen. Okay, hold on, let's just see. All right, Glenn, can you hear me? Glenn at Dev, can you hear me? Don't know if you can or not. I'm going to pass over that then. I'll go back. Rita at Rita's iPad, can you hear me? Please respond if you can hear me. So we have two, no responses.
I could hear you now.
Great, thank you. Shannon Kelly, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you.
Great. Deborah Orth, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Chair Rose. Thank you.
Okay. Grant Dungan, can you hear me?
Chairman Rose, I don't think Grant has a microphone on the computer that he's on, but he's with me. So if he needs to speak, he can do it through my computer.
So I'm going to assume that Mr. Dungan cannot hear me.
Oh, he can hear you, but he cannot speak. He has to use my computer to speak.
I gotcha. Okay. Mike Novak, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great. Jessica Noonan, can you hear me?
Yes, thanks.
Someone by the name of Jim S., can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Excellent. Molly Novak, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Eric Johnson, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Michael Mondu, and the rest of your name is hidden. Can you hear me?
That's Michael Mondes with Facebook. Can hear you.
Okay. All right. Bridget Kelly, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great. Lue Abuna, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go once more back to give this last person. Glenn, can you hear me? The one who cannot hear me, so.
I think we had someone join also,
Marcia. Marcia, can you hear me? She's connecting right now. I know this seems tiresome, but really, this is, in virtual meetings, this is really how we have to do it. So I will come back to see if Marcia and Glenn can hear me. Let me write down their names. Okay. I will then ask Eileen Franz to please call the roll to establish a quorum. Before she does that, I will ask, again, everybody, please mute your microphones because we have so many folks on that it really, it will cause distortion if it's not muted. And if you are not speaking, Mr. Daniel, you have two sites here. Can I ask what that's about?
I do. One of them, the black screen, is the one that I use to display anything, such as the PDF or the PowerPoint, in case that we have to display from my computer. That's just for display purposes.
Can you mute it in case? Can you please
There's
mute
no
it?
microphone. Yeah, it's muted.
There's no microphone on it.
I'll
Okay.
make sure it shows as mute, though.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. So if you'll do that during any time, then you can, when you speak, please unmute yourself and speak. And truly the preaching is for the preacher, because there will be many times when I'll think I'm unmuted and I'm not. So I will work on that myself. So Eileen, will you please call the roll to establish a quorum?
Thank you. Commissioner Burns,
Here.
Commissioner Callaway,
Here.
Commissioner Garland,
Here.
Commissioner Hoffman,
Here.
Commissioner McCoy,
Here.
Commissioner Pittman,
Here.
Commissioner Snyder,
Here.
Commissioner Uditsky,
Here.
Chair Rose.
Here. We have a quorum. Thank you very much. The next item of business is public comment. And I want to make a note, we have a lot of people on this meeting. So I want to differentiate for you what this public comment is about versus public comment that may come later. You are more than welcome to speak during this public comment time. This time is generally set aside for any general comments you want to make about any specific zoning issues, etc. I want to advise you, however, that if you wish to make a public comment about any of the cases we're going to be discussing, especially in tonight's public hearing, I would encourage you to wait Until that case is called, there will be a time for public comment at that point. If you speak at this point with public comment, your comments really will not become a part of the public record, and we are not obligated at all to consider any of your comments as we deliberate. So I don't say that to discourage you, but I also say that to make sure you know where's the best way to have your comments heard. So let me ask, is there anyone who would like to make a public comment about any particular zoning issue? I'll first ask Eileen to please check her email to see if there's any public comment, one who wants to make a general public comment.
No, not in the email.
Great, thank you. I'll ask Emily Egan to please check voicemail. Is there anyone who wishes to make a public comment there?
No voicemails for public comment.
Thank you. Mike, is there anyone in the public comment room who wishes to make a comment on a general issue of zoning at this point?
No, there is not.
Okay, thank you. Then we will close this section of public comment. The next is a receipt of written communications. Eileen, are there any written communications we have received that were not on board docs?
There are a couple more emails that have come into the planning info email that will get posted at the conclusion of the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll then move on to the business of the commission. The first item of business is the approval of minutes of the January 26th Zoning and Planning Commission meeting. Can I have a motion and a second to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Commissioner Callaway moves and Commissioner Uditsky seconds. Is that correct?
Yes.
All righty. So are there any additions, deletions, corrections that anyone wishes to make on the minutes? Okay. Seeing none, I will ask Eileen to please call the roll to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Commissioner Callaway.
Yes.
Commissioner Uditsky.
Yes.
Commissioner Burns.
Yes.
Commissioner Garland.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy.
Yes.
Commissioner Pittman.
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder.
Yes.
Chair Rose.
Yes. Minutes are approved. Okay. The next item of business, Eileen, I'm going to ask you to mute. There you go. Thank you. Next item of business is case number 20P11, Elmhurst University final PUD approval for conditional use permit for PUD areas between the streets of Prospect, Myrtle, Alexander, and Park. Eileen, are you handling this one?
Yes, I am.
Could you please introduce this to us?
Sorry, give me just a second.
That's okay. Take the time you need.
Okay, this is a approval of a preliminary plan development for Elmhurst University for construction, kind of an expansion and reconstruction of the parking lot. We did review the preliminary plans versus the final plans, and it is in substantial conformance. The applicant has made some changes to the trees, and he identified those, a representative from Elmhurst University identified the changes to the trees, and those were included in the packet. Otherwise, our engineering staff is, nearing completion of their review. And like I said, the proposal is in substantial conformance with what was approved last summer.
Thank you. In order to move this along, I'm going to ask if we could get a motion to approve the final plat, motion and a second to approve, and then we'll move to discussion of this.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Burns. And a second, please.
I'll second.
Commissioner McCoy. Great. Thank you very much. Commissioner Burns.
Thank you, Chair Rose. As the members of the commission who were here for the preliminary version of this submittal will recall, in July, we reviewed the submittal in great detail. The applicant also provided quite a bit of detail for us to digest. And the outcome was that we approved the preliminary plat and the preliminary request for PUD. Now before us, we have a very minor modification. And as city planner friends told us, there were a few changes in the trees. And I'm reading the memo dated January 28th, 2021, which indicates that the number of trees being planted has not changed, but the proposed tree species has changed in a few locations. I don't find that this changes any of our conclusions from July as to the suitability of this plan development, and therefore I would urge its approval, which I would vote in favor of. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Uditsky.
Sure. I think I second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Commissioner McCoy.
That's okay. I completely agree with Commissioner Burns that this should be granted.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I'm excited by the substitutions they've made. I think it really makes a whole lot of sense. Box elders are a pretty weak tree. It's not a real strong tree, and I think it's great to hear that they are in substantial conformance and that the size of the trees are at least 2.5 inches in caliper size. And the lighting as well, I want to take note of that, that they have eliminated some luminaries that were going to be placed along Myrtle Street sidewalk, and they have been eliminated from the project. So city staff have determined this is in substantial conformance, and looking back on my notes, I think it is. So I think it's going to be great to see this project move forward. I really, really like that the university is really putting trees in a parking lot and using a really more environmentally friendly way to provide shade, to soften the effects of a parking lot. I think that it's a great point, and I'm wholly in support of this as well. So, any other discussion or questions from commissioners? Any other commissioner have anything they wish to comment on about this? No? Seeing none, then I will ask Eileen to please call the roll.
Thank you. Commissioner Burns.
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy.
Yes.
Commissioner Callaway.
Yes.
Commissioner Garland.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner Pittman.
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder.
Yes.
Commissioner Uditsky.
Yes.
Chair Rose.
Yes. That passes, and look forward to see a great new development in that part of town. So the next item of business is a continuation of the public hearing. No, the next item of business actually is case number 20P21, the Molto Properties conditional use. That is going to be continued to the meeting on February 17th. Eileen, that was the petitioner's request to continue that.
Correct.
The next item of business is the continuation of the public hearing that began last week. And before we begin this, I want to bring just a recap onto this in terms of our procedures. I promised last time we heard the petitioner, and then our next, the way we usually, the protocol is that the applicant testifies, then there's questions from the commission, and there were some, and then there's public testimony. Everyone has 5 minutes, however, and I'll talk about this a little later, that we will, they do have the right to cross-examine, but let me be very clear, cross-examine the applicant. It is not our procedure, and I would deem it not appropriate that cross-examination occur with members of the commission or cross-examination would to occur with city staff. We are a deliberative body. We are not policymakers. We will deliberate. So we are not the applicant. Our job is to hear the applicant's point of view and to hear the public's point of view. If there are questions that people have, I would suggest they put them to the applicant. Questions for city staff can appropriately come from commissioners. They are a resource really to the commission, and it really is not appropriate that they be cross-examined in this. So I want to make sure everyone understands that. The process is that we will take public testimony tonight. The applicant will have a chance to respond, and then we'll close the public hearing. However, if what will take precedence over that is we will close this meeting at 10 o'clock. I would not be inclined for us to go past 10 o'clock, but we will go until 10 o'clock. If there is significant discussion, testimony still for us to listen to, we are happy to listen to that, but we will listen to it at another scheduled meeting of the Zoning and Planning Commission. So we want to make sure everybody's voice gets heard, but we really want to avoid going to such an hour that people have less ability to really pay attention and less ability to really hear people. So it's my intention to close this public hearing at 10 o'clock. Saying all that, I just want to also call your attention to, we have 46 participants in this particular zoning hearing, this public hearing. There's a lot of interest in this. A lot of people may have, there's several things they may want to talk about. They may have a statement that they want to make. They may just want to provide testimony, or they may want to ask questions. I'm going to ask folks to really think about the people around you. There's a lot of people who want to talk. I'd like to take the people first who really just want to make a statement. They want to either say, we think this is a great idea or not a great idea, may want to give some reasons for that, may want to give some testimony on that. Would like to take them first. Those people who know that they wish to ask questions of the applicant in order, I would like to take them second. I would also like to suggest that, first of all, while you have every right, everyone has a right to talk and express their viewpoint on this, that you think about your neighbors and your community as you're doing this. So if someone else has said exactly the thing that you wanted to say, just having 3 or 4 more people come up and say, I want to go over those points again, while you can do that, I think that you should think about whether that's really going to allow the people in your community, other people who are waiting to say something, if they're going to have time to make their thoughts known. So I just urge you to think about that before you speak. And saying that, we're going to first move. I will ask Eileen if there's anyone on the phone or anyone through voicemail who wishes to make a statement on this case, wishes to give testimony on this case.
So I didn't receive any new emails in the planning info email with anyone who wishes to be called. Emily just went to check the voicemail. I do want to mention, though, we've had some more people join the Zoom meeting, and we need to identify them and make sure that they can hear us and be heard.
And Chair Rose, there were no voicemails for public comment.
Excellent, thank you. Let me go through, I can see some of them. Mr. Tony Noyce. Mr. Noyce, I'm going to ask you to unmute and tell me, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Excellent. Let me look on the next one. Okay, someone by the name of Bill. Bill, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great, thank you. Samuel Figueroa, and Bill, can you please mute yourself when you're not speaking? Thank you. Samuel Figueroa.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Excellent. Did I ask Rita? Did I ask you if you could hear me, Rita, previously?
You did, thank you.
Well, see, you get 2 shots at it. So I really want to know if I can hear you. So great.
Thanks.
And Yina Yu, can you hear me? Ms. Yu, if you can hear me, could you please unmute and acknowledge that you can hear me? Okay. Scott Schultz, can you hear me? Mr. Schultz, I'm going to ask you to please unmute and acknowledge that you can hear me. Okay. We have someone who's identified as PPLLC. Can you please identify yourself and let me know if you can hear me?
Yes, Chair Rose, I can hear you. My name is Glenn from EndevCon. You had me earlier. I had some trouble with the connection with the previous computer, so that's who I really am. Thank you.
Great. Okay. And then Stephen Anzaldi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Okay. So everyone can hear me. All right. I'm going to start first in the public comment room and ask Mike Kopp, Assistant City Manager Mike Kopp, are there people in that room who would like to give testimony and don't, before we do that, I'm going to ask Kiki Andropoulos, the court reporter, to please swear in everyone who wishes to speak tonight. This is a legal proceeding and you will be under oath to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And we will ask Kiki Andropoulos to please administer the oath. And if you intend to speak, would you please raise your right hand and she will administer the oath to you.
Okay, if you would raise your right hand, please. Do you all solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Yes.
I do.
I do.
I do.
Excellent. Thank you. Now I'm going to ask Mike Kopp if there are those in the public comment room who really want to make a public comment, and right now they don't have much, they don't have an intention to question the applicant. Can we ask them, I'm going to ask you to have them come forward one by one and identify themselves. You will have, if you just make a statement, you'll have 5 minutes. So.
We have one person who wants to just make public comment.
Bring them on. We're happy to hear it.
Good evening. I actually have a few photos I'd like to share that are present on board docs. Is there a way to share the screen here with the public on Zoom?
Let me see, Mike. Can you also identify yourself?
Yes. Good evening. My name is Laura Villanueva.
Okay. All right. So let's let Mike, he's going to be able to do that. Okay. Let's let him set it up.
Thank you.
Which ones you want?
Yeah, it should be one of the bottom items in the interested party comments listed by my last name. Thank you. I think it's just one above the interested party comments on the left-hand bar there.
On this one here?
Yes.
Chair Rose.
And then towards the bottom, it is the PDF. Yep, that is it. Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Callaway.
Just a quick question while we're waiting. I didn't see Mr. Day on the line. Is he present?
Yeah.
He was in the applicant room, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, is it set up, Mike? Excellent.
Thank you and good evening. My name, as I mentioned, is Laura Villanueva, and I live at 269 West Eggleston Avenue. As of recently, early August 2020, with my husband Edgar, who is here with me, and our two children aged 2 and 5. I'd like to thank the commissioners and City Hall staff for the opportunity to comment on what I know to be a very important matter in this case, 20P19. My comments begin by revisiting slide 8 of the applicant's presentation given on January 20th, 2021, where there is key bolded and unbolded font. As identified on their slide, the text aisle note comes from the zoning ordinance 22.242. Click forward. Below the bolded piece of ordinance, please note what was left unbolded. The parking lots established on such residential lots must first be approved in accordance with section 22.26. Clearly, this leads us to revisit section 22.26 and the letter and spirit of what is written. It is as follows. Line H standards, no conditional use shall be recommended by the Planning Commission unless they shall find, 1, that the establishment, maintenance, or operation of the conditional use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. And item 2, that the conditional use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor substantially diminish and impair property values within the neighborhood. Consider please with the following figurative and literal 360-degree view of Eggleston Avenue, how and why a proposal of a 50-plus space parking lot whose ingress and egress is on the street is inevitably deleterious for the, as stated in Elmhurst zoning code, general welfare of the residents on Eggleston Avenue. This first photo comes from slide 21 of the applicant's presentation and gives an extremely limited view of our street, as it does not reflect the residential majority of Eggleston Avenue. This screenshot provides a significant 90-degree turn looking east down the north side of Eggleston Avenue, where we reside. The sidewalks you see are used vigorously and regularly by a steady stream of dog walkers, joggers, high school students, young children, and general pedestrian and vehicular traffic. Likewise, the photo from the applicant's January 20th presentation, slide 24, gives an incomplete view of the south side of Eggleston Avenue. Another 90-degree turn east on the south side of Eggleston offers a better and more complete view of the frequently used sidewalks that already traverse the current parking lot. Again, these are high volume sidewalks used by children, families, and adults throughout the day, into night, year round. In summary, Eggleston Avenue is what you see, an overwhelmingly residential street with an already very high volume of pedestrian and vehicular traffic. Finally, I'd like to highlight item 6 of this code that reads, the proposed conditional use shall not be contrary to the objectives of the current comprehensive plan of the city. The text and phrase comprehensive plan received textual reference within the applicant's presentation 21 times, and it is certainly worthy of one additional look within my final comments. You can read the majority of the code, but I'd like to emphasize that this is included on slide 70, included on slide 75 of the applicant's presentation, that the comprehensive plan does indeed support development and welcome change, and I recognize that, but it very obviously states in more than one way that it is to be done in the spirit and the benefit of the entire community, that it is to be inclusive and contextually sensitive to its residents. It is my fervent opinion, and I believe that of many others, as is evidenced of over 35 interested party comments, that the proposal would indeed be harmful to the benefit of the entire community, as it is explicitly stated in the comprehensive plan. The proposal is not in the spirit or principles of the aforementioned codes and line items. Thank you.
Before you sit down, Ms. Villanueva, could you please tell me, upon advice of our city attorney, I'll be asking this of everyone who gives testimony, do you live within 250 feet of the proposed change?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a statement?
Nobody else? Everybody else in the comment room, public comment room, is going to ask questions.
Okay. Mike, I'm going to ask you to start at the front of the room and ask people to come up. Please identify yourself. Please let me know if you live within 250 feet of the proposed lot that is the lot that is being proposed. And then again, I would ask you to direct your questions, please, to the applicant.
Hello, my name is Paul Schenko, S-I-E-N-K-O. I do not live within 250 feet of the site. I have a couple of questions to ask, and then I've actually got several questions to ask. I'm a relatively simple individual, and I like to be fair and honest. There were inconsistencies in the meeting of the last meeting, and I want to bring those to your attention. First of all, the public load, the parking load, was based on rapid turnaround dining. And Scott Day, or the applicant's attorney, stated this is not white tablecloth dining. On the website for Roberto's, the description is elegant white table dining as of this morning, which is true. I asked that of the applicant, which is true. And then I have got more questions to ask as well.
I'm going to suggest you ask all your questions before we get them answered.
Thank you. I'm not prepared. I'm not aware of the procedure, so I just wanted to clarify.
That's okay. Don't worry.
It was stated that 10% of the traffic load would be based on Eggleston presently. Now, with this 57 parking spots, that means that are strictly for the resident, or the restaurant, that means a grand load of that parking is going to be on a residential street. The parking load, the man that testified for the parking load had 3 separate models that gave between a 40 to a 200 spot deficit based on a rapid turnaround dining. When that is changed to how you define the dining in your website, what is that parking load then? How is that adjusted? There was a parking in board docs, there was a parking load test several years before. That was before pandemic times, and if I recall correctly, on site of checking parking over a weekend, there was actually a surplus of parking. Has the occupancy on Spring Road increased since then, or have storefronts closed since then? Meaning therefore there's more occupancy. Solely taking the belief of a textbook that gives between 40 to 200, that's a swing that's fantastic to believe. That's a swing that's fantastic to believe. Several times over the meeting, the lawyer for the applicant has mentioned bringing up landscaping, bringing up fencing, bringing up berms. The term berms was brought up several times. Later in that meeting, the same man mentioned that berms would be impossible because of the distance between the lot line and the parking lot. Why bring up berms if it's an impossibility? Our fence is an impossibility. Our landscaping an impossibility. What else are we going to not be truthful on? Also, early in that meeting as well, the entrance for the restaurant will not change. That was from the applicant himself. The entrance will not change. It's on the Spring Road. At the end of the meeting, the entrance is in the back now by the parking lot, which is accurate. The study of traffic flow was based on non-event parking loads for rapid turnaround dining. Later in the meeting, discussion about the desire to host larger events. How does larger events affect the traffic load for the group, for the parking? If you have a 100-person, 200-person event, then we're loading that parking lot. It's inconsistent. It's not full and truthful. The lights on the 16-foot poles, I believe those were stated in some of the plats.
Excuse me, I'm going to ask you, your 5 minutes is up. Can you, I don't know how many more questions you have, but if you could, we have a lot of people, if you could kind of pull them together, please.
Okay. Are the lights going to be in the backyards of the applicants of the houses that are directly across from the way? Are they going to be shining in those residences' backyards, right off their decks? It looked like they were. The last one I want to ask is, if this parking lot does go, and if it is true with 892 two-way traffic loads per day, are all those, how many of those people are going to be pointing directly towards residential houses within 5 feet of their property line, actually within 3 feet 8 inches of their property line on some lots, and on others directly against their property line? It's not safe for the children. It's not safe for the houses. So those are my questions I wish to ask. I have more, but being respectful, I'll stop at this point.
Thank you. We really appreciate that. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask the applicant to, and this is our usual procedure, how we've done it, which is we're going to ask the applicant to take note of these questions, and we'll get all the questions and then they'll answer them at one time. So, okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out too. Okay, Mike, is there another person in the public comment room who has some questions and wants to give testimony?
Nope.
No?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Okay.
I have questions. Okay.
Can you please come forward, identify yourself, give us your name, and tell me, do you live within 250 feet of this project?
I do. My name is Rob Eisenmenger.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you so much again for everything that you do. Your job is sometimes very thankless. So the questions that I have to start off, Pasquale, in our meeting prior to the last meeting, the date escapes me, you mentioned that you were going to, in the essence of transparency, share that you wanted to build a banquet hall in the next couple years. When asked by commissioners in the last meeting, why didn't you share that with them? How many buildings do you guys own, be it Maurice's, the Maurice family?
Set the timer, even though we're letting people beyond.
Sorry?
Should I still set the timer, even if we know people are going beyond, just so we have
Eileen.
engaging? Okay.
Yep. Pardon?
Somebody was talking. Okay. So for the applicant, how many businesses do you currently own on Spring Road? How many business buildings? How many parking spots for each of those buildings do you have? What is the total parking, private parking for those buildings? You mentioned the reason for the need was for the loss of business to your restaurant. Please share documents or financial documents that state that. How many businesses on the north side of Spring Road, that would be north of the Prairie Path, are actually open past 6 o'clock during your time of greatest need? I live directly next to one of the lots. This lot floods pretty much every single time it rains. I'd like to ask how many times you've come out to actually help me pump out the lot, offer anything, even just a thank you. My comments would be, that I do not believe that this is going to be safe for my two little daughters in this ever-growing community on Eggleston. It may be a short street, Scott. However, it's a pleasant street. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eisinger, and thank you again for coming out. Mike, is there the next person?
Hello.
Hi, please identify yourself and tell me if you live within 250 feet of this proposed project.
Becky Dungman, and yes, I do live within 250 feet. I live at 270 West Eggleston. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Okay. Thank you for allowing us to speak at this public hearing. I really appreciate it. I have questions. I did have a statement in addition. I thought we could ask questions and then read a statement, but I'll ask the questions for now. This is regarding the asbestos that we do believe is in the parcel behind my home at 276 West Eggleston Avenue. I want to ask the applicant where we are with getting written permission to have that tested. I also have questions about the bike racks. And I wondered how the bicyclists will actually get to the bike racks. Are they going to be crossing the grassy area from the prairie path and the street? Will there be a sidewalk constructed in addition to what's already there? And will that impede onto Park District property? I just don't know how that will all work. And will there be refuse containers for their garbage? Because we know bicyclists have water bottles and whatnot, and they will definitely need somewhere to dispose of those items. And now in my questions about the parking lots, how will the patrons get to the front of the restaurant from the parking lots unless there's additional concrete poured for them to do so? And who will monitor these parking lots for proper usage? Will there be an allowance for the trailers to sit for months without moving or being used? And will cars be allowed to sit for years without being used or moved? Will there be dumpsters placed in these parking lots for the deposit of construction material being brought from other locations? Will there be pallets placed upon each other, mounted feet into the air and left there for weeks on end? Will there be signs posted for patrons regarding the rules of these lots? How will they be posted so as not to be viewed by the residential homes? How will the public alley be maintained as the traffic will now be accelerated by many, many cars? What will be done about the stray animals that are living in the vacant storage areas of your property? Will you maintain the proposed fencing and shrubs? And how will the snow be plowed so that it does not melt onto the residential properties? Who will shovel the snow on the sidewalks on the North and South Eggleston properties that you currently own and are never scooped or shoveled? When you lease out the parking spots, who will monitor the usage of these areas? And we wonder why you can't tear the current bank property that you own and make your employees park in the public area behind the old bike shop that you now own. Why couldn't you tear down the bike shop and put parking there? Why can't you tear down the building at Spring and Eggleston that you own and put parking there? You currently have trailers parked there and a car parked there that haven't moved in weeks, and the car hasn't moved in years. I figure there's about 5 spots there that are not even being utilized, and you can tell because the snow is that they're never used because the snow has been plowed all around them. How soon after you get approval for your 3 parking lots will you build a banquet center? What will the occupancy be for the banquet center, and will it be in addition to the current restaurant that you have? What is the current occupancy for the restaurant? Would it match what I would find if I called the fire marshal? Why aren't your deliveries for your business made in the front of your business where you already have 6 or 7 10-minute parking spots that would accommodate the deliveries that could be made in the early morning hours, and your large trucks would not be coming in and out on Eggleston Avenue where there's small children, pedestrians, and dog walkers and bicyclists? What is your guarantee that my home won't be hit by a vehicle? I read in a report yesterday that 60 buildings are hit by vehicles every day in the United States of America. How will the garbage behind your business be corralled in all of these lots? I am very concerned about the safety of my own home and my family's home when I have a gas meter that will be feet from where the parking is proposed. If my home gets hit by a vehicle, I will have difficulty getting in and out, getting out in a timely fashion. This is of great concern to me and my family. Elmhurst prides itself on its neighborhoods and its safety of all its citizens. It's everyone's constitutional right to live their lives in the safety, security, and peace of the residential neighbor in which we all have purchased our homes, in which this has been a residential street for 100 years. The comprehensive plan is 12 years old. In that time span, the homes on this stretch of Eggleston have undergone massive renovation and improvements and upkeep, and have been kept up to the utmost ability of all the residents. The only properties that are in disrepair are the properties that are owned by the applicant. We are not able to park on the street in front of our homes because the street on that stretch of Eggleston is very narrow. And we watch the trucks come in and out of the back of the property struggle. They have to do 3- and 4-point turns to get in and out of that part of Eggleston Avenue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming out tonight too. We appreciate it. I know people thank us for allowing them to speak, but really this is your government. You do have a right to speak. So let me ask who is the next person who has some questions they want to ask. Hi, please identify yourself and tell me if you live within 250 feet of this proposed project.
Hi, I'm, excuse me, I got to take this off. I am Mike Pusich. I live within 250 feet. I live at 260 West Eggleston in the townhomes that are immediately east of the proposed parking lot.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I have a series of questions, and then I do have a statement to make, but I'd like to hold the statement for later.
Okay, well, you've got 5 minutes, so, and we will.
First question is related to the 300 feet. The parking spaces can be developed on residential property that abuts the property on which the use is located, if within 300 feet of the front entrance to that use. How is that 300 feet measured? Is that measured from the farthest parking lot, the farthest parking space to the front door, or from the property line to the front door? It's a little bit unclear how that's done. There was a discussion memo of March 26th that we obtained by FOIA that said that the R2 lot north of Eggleston and the R4 lot that's being proposed for parking technically do not abut the restaurant. Was this ever resolved? A question was asked about accessible parking, and I noticed that the applicant has put accessible parking on a recent submittal, but I think that's got to be looked at in terms of pathways for accessible and handicapped use, and in terms of location of where that parking is proposed. The number of the spaces that are required for parking, there was a city study for Spring Road dated December 28, 2006, that said that there was sufficient parking in that area. And that actually, it said there was an excess of parking. Nothing has changed, to my knowledge, since that study was done. So what has changed that would require this extensive parking addition in that area? Spring Road merchants have come out in favor of adding more parking for their use, but we never saw the petition that they were given. We don't know what they were asked to come out in favor of it. When we talked to the merchants, they're not familiar with this application. So we'd like some clarification on that. What actually were they asked? That was asked. Flooding was, I'll let other people talk about flooding. One thing we're concerned about, our complex, I manage the townhouses, and we have a serious problem with flooding and stormwater management now. We don't see anything that tells us how the stormwater is going to be directed away from our property, because we certainly can't take any more onto our property. We already get enough from the apartments on the other side. Traffic studies done during the COVID pandemic probably need to be revisited under real conditions. They seem to be somewhat vague on how they're going to affect the traffic in the area. Delivery trucks, semis and vans, Roberto's Pizza delivery fleet, garbage trucks, vehicles accessing other business in the area will be commingling with passenger cars. That seems to be a safety problem. We haven't seen anything about maneuvering of trucks to get onto the property, up to the docks, and miss all the cars. We'd like to see more clarification on how they intend to have delivery vehicles come into this area, back up to their docks, and then exit. And we caution that with all this activity in that parking lot, especially the one directly behind Roberto's, pedestrians are going to be walking in the parking lot they're going to be walking past the docks, past the dumpsters to get to the restaurant. They'll be walking through the parking lot, and there's a lot of activity proposed in that parking lot. How is that mixed when you throw in bicycles, joggers, just regular pedestrians? There seems to be a lot of conflict going on there. That could be a real safety concern. I'd like the applicant to address that. We are a little bit concerned about having this large parking lot with the potential for theft, vagrancy, graffiti, and general vandalism increasing in the area. We'd like to hear someone comment on that. I think everyone should refer to the wonderful letter written by Tom Diamond that addresses property values and the potential for the erosion of property values in the area when there's parking thrust into that area. We have a concern about how close the parking lot of the R4 lot comes to our townhouses. We're going to have to change our landscaping. We're not going to be able to get around our buildings when this is done. It's going to be a real imposition on how we manage and maintain our properties. We've had no input to that with the applicants. We'd like to see a more gracious transition done in that area. Setbacks in general for landscaping buffers, when it comes to commercial, moving into residential areas, the city doesn't do a very good job of setting setbacks that are adequate for making nice transitional buffers and so forth. We're just concerned that there's just not enough land to properly landscape, to put walkways, to soften that buffer between a hard edge commercial development and an existing residential area. We're very concerned about the fact that the parking has just been crammed in, and the engineering studies that have been done have really been to justify the parking, not to enhance the parking scheme or make the development a little nicer. Several businesses along Spring Road have allowed their backyards to become storage areas for tires, used cars, used car parts, junk. Fences have deteriorated. How can we ensure that that doesn't happen in this development, especially when it's sitting in our backyards? Kathy talked about the greenhouse and the mound. There was a 10-foot wide utility easement between our property along the east property line of the R4 lot. It's labeled as R90140913. It runs along the eastern edge of the property line against our townhomes. That's been kind of ignored in all the plans, and I don't know, I'd like to hear something about what is the position on paving over an easement or putting a fence around an easement, blocking access to that easement, especially utility easement like that. Can provisions be made to turn the lights off at 11 p.m.? Can we restrict semis from this site? Because there's a terrible problem right now getting semis into that site. Kathy already alluded to that with the K-turns they have to make and the extensive maneuvering they have to make. And can something be done about restricting parking at Eggleston and Spring Road that would improve the lines of sight, especially if we have more traffic going there? We're probably going to see more accidents happening. So those are my questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for coming out. We appreciate it.
No.
Mike, would you have the next person come up? Please give us your name and tell me if you live within 250 feet.
I'm Otis Dungan, and I live within 250 feet.
Thank you.
I have questions.
Hold on a second.
Oh, sure.
Chair Rose,
Yes.
the last gentleman that went, he said he wants to make a public comment later. I don't know, will he be allowed to come back and comment again, or should he have done it all at one time?
Probably should have done that all at one time. We're going to try to let everybody in tonight. If there's time at the end of it, I'd let him do it. If not, he can come back. I mean, if it's a statement,
that was a statement.
Yeah, I would encourage you to write that and bring it to us because we will read all of it. But if you live within 250 feet, we're just going to allow you to make a statement and ask questions. If you don't, we're going to probably limit you to the 5 minutes. So, okay. I want to make sure that we get as many people heard tonight as possible.
In the applicant's application, they talk about that we live in an isolated island. And they talk about how the comprehensive plan has described that basically they need to put more parking in there. I'd like to talk about the 6 houses that we've lived there since 1995 when the house was built. The house next to us was built in 1999. Across the street, we have built in 96, built in 94, completely revamped. Currently, there's a Harmony Bible of 800 and some pages that's been submitted, and it claims that we all live in harmony. And I would like to point out that throughout the entire, if you start up in where they built the condos across from Silverado. Those weren't there in 1956. They were given a 16-foot buffer. All the businesses south of Spring Road have a 16-foot alley, and folks, their garages are in the back. The people that live in the condos, there's 3 homes, and if somebody went through the fence, they'd have to go a ways to hit the back of the house. We have an apartment building down south, and it's pointed out in the rebuttal that this apartment building is, the house next to their parking at the apartment building is worth being fair market valued at $900,000. That person chose to build that house in 2005. When we bought our house in 1995, we had a house next to us, because we'd already lived by a parking lot and for 11 years, and that was enough of that. Nobody notified us that they could make a conditional use plan. We got no mailer, no meeting. I actually attended several of the comprehensive plan meetings. And I met with the guy that used to work here and asked him all kinds of questions. I went to the open houses. Mayor Marcucci on cable TV said, "What is going on? These are brand new homes. What are you talking about?" You look at the comprehensive plan and all those sketches, you will see lot 2, 3, 4, the parcel that is 5, and they're all parking, or they're all commercial industry, or they're all this concept of 3 stories and an office down below and then an apartment or whatever. There isn't the configurement that's being applied for right now. And it's not in that comprehensive plan. It's all or nothing. Also, in the 1971 thing that's been unearthed, and then 1990, it says that there's no structure that can be put on that parcel. Light pole, fencing, asphalt, structure, unless you own lots 2, 3, 4. The applicant does not own those other 2 homes, nor does he own that property. The comprehensive plan figured that out. That's why there's 3 and 4 of everything. And all those sketches and the workshop and all that good stuff. We're the only people in town that are going to have a bar with parking next to our home. It'll be a first for Elmhurst. We're not thrilled. We know that people, an unforeseen event. New Cara, it was Valette. They moved over, built a brand new building by First U.S. Bank. 5 or 6 people drove into that building before they bothered to put up anything. Now, we've talked about that everything's going to be code compliant. I've heard that about 18 times. What's code compliant for parking next to a house? The bare minimum? A vinyl fence? Nobody has any answers. We're not getting a 16-foot buffer next to our house. We're getting a 5-foot buffer. That's it. Now, you just saw my wife. She's had multiple sclerosis for 24 years. She is unable to walk. I can't get her out of that house. Somebody goes into that house. If you take a car that weighs 5,000 pounds, you drive at 10 miles an hour into my house is going to lose. That's 50,000 pounds of impact. I had NICOR out. They told me they hit this gas, you're done. You die from the smoke before you die from the fire. We have the former police fire chief here. Is that all right? You're going to go down in a couple minutes. So I'm asking, why would you want to do this? We have a neighborhood of 6 homes, not even the 13 townhouses, that are being cash market valued at almost $3.5 million. Do we deserve to look like, I don't know, think of all the blighted towns in Illinois where all the work left and things are looking tough. I don't want to name them off. I think everybody has them running through their head right now. So we have a culture on our block where we take care of each other, snow blow, keys to each other's houses, get the mail. The applicant has another culture. We are trending residential, not commercial. The comprehensive plan, one of the first few things it says is to protect the residential areas. You want to make us all parking? Buy us out. Make the whole street parking, or whatever it said in the comprehensive plan. When I went to meetings, Darrell Whistler, who was the chair, sat me down and said, "You don't open your mouth until I talk to you." So I sat there. He asked me a few questions. I came back and I said, can I go talk to the person that wrote this up? Yes. He asked me, he told me later, it's a concept. Comprehensive plan is a concept. So we go through all this and we come to, in the Harmony Bible, chapter 4, 22-28, where they look at my side of the street, which is 270, my fair market value for my home built in 1995 or being cashed or whatever it is by the tax assessor is $585. 10 feet away is a house that has 138 square more feet than mine, built in 99, we're 4 years apart, being fair market cash value at $730. I'm down 150 grand large. And you're telling me I'm going to get this parking behind me and next to me? I'm going to go up in value? No, I'm not. We'll just start to flood. We've never flood, and we'll get blockbusted. And then they'll offer to buy us for $300,000. And we've had meetings. We've talked. We're trying at open communication. I hope I can get some answers to some of this stuff. I'd like to know in section 4, 22-28, how come the townhomes were left out completely? And there's the Argyle Gardens apartment for their value. What happened to 13 townhomes, of which they want to park next to one that just sold for $500,000? So I just got a real problem with somebody parking next to my house 5 feet away. Doesn't make any sense. And I think it is basically discriminates against us for being disabled. We should have free access. We should be safe. We can't park in our front street because the fire rig can't get down the street. So they've had those regulations for years. How is somebody going to come in and get my wife? Somebody bowls through. I don't want to have a demolition derby at my house, if folks know what that is. Or have a betting pool. How long will it take till somebody drives into the house? It's a very, very concerned. My wife and I bought the house in 1995. We were nice and healthy, and now we have issues, and that's what happens in 25 years. So I would like those to be protected. I'm done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Duncan. Appreciate your coming out. Okay.
That's it for the public comment room.
Okay, thank you. There have been some folks who have joined us. If you have joined us since I asked if you could hear me, would you please raise your hand and let me know? Mr. Sully Tiger, or Ms. Sully Tiger, can I ask, can you hear me? Can you please unmute and tell me if you can hear me? I have no response. Jennifer Villarreal, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great, thank you. Rick's iPhone, please identify yourself and tell me if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to go back to Yina Yu and Scott Schultz, who I did not hear from before. Can you hear me? Yina Yu, Miss Yu, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, and Scott Schultz, can you hear me? Okay, still no response. All right. Okay, so we've heard from people in public comment. Now we're going to go to those folks who are here. Let me ask just a moment how, let me make sure we do this. We can do this. I can just go along here and ask if you want to make comments. For example, Mr. Figueroa, do you wish to give public testimony at this point?
I would love to.
Then please tell me, do you live within 250 feet of the project?
No, I live in the College View neighborhood.
Okay, then you have 5 minutes, please, to make your comments.
Okay, so can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So I'm not going to thank you, Miss Rose, for this opportunity, but I am going to thank you for your poise, your grace, and your humility. I think you've done an amazing job, and I really appreciate that. I know this is my right, and I like to exercise it.
Well, thank you.
So with that, I have been in Elmhurst since 2009. I lived in an apartment. I bought a home in 2011. I've gotten married, have 2 kids. My brother has moved to Elmhurst. He also lives in the College View neighborhood 2 blocks away from me. Since then, my wife's cousin moved, is also in the College View neighborhood. My mother moved to Elmhurst, and she's in the downtown area. We're a very heavily invested family in the community. What concerns me is the idea of the conditional use and how an applicant might, over time, start consuming land and utilizing that conditional use to change the landscape of our environment. It seems to me, from what I've heard, that they clearly understood for a very long time, what the use case was. And it seems to me that this being, from what I can tell, the 2nd or 3rd attempt, that it does not matter to them. It's something that I see when I drive down Spring Road, all the different businesses there and adjacent houses, that this will impact them in the future. When I go down Crescent View, exact same thing, tons and tons of homes adjacent to businesses that this could potentially impact. Going up and down York, going down, you name whatever street that has a business adjacent to property could theoretically buy a home, wait many years, and try to have something changed to their favor. So I'm thinking not so much as somebody who enjoys Spring Road, and although I haven't tasted the fine food of Roberto's, I'm sure it's delicious. I'm thinking more of what it means for us as a community. So at the onset, you spoke about the idea of community. And this decision isn't just going to impact Eggleston, right? So I think the wonderful people in the public comment had an array of very rational and legitimate arguments. And I hope that you understand that if more people understood in Elmhurst how this will impact all of Elmhurst in the future, in every different neighborhood that is adjacent to a business, you would see more than 48 participants here. It's sad that so many people aren't aware of this and that they don't understand the implication of setting such a precedent, but that's what we're doing here right now. I love this community. I'm growing my family in this community. I'm bringing more family into this community. And to think if someone asked me, should I move to Elmhurst? And they asked me about a property that's close to a business, and if something like this were to pass, I can't confidently say that this community is for the residents. I can confidently say that this community is for business people. And if you want to start a business and you want to expand that business, regardless of what the rules currently are, it's a possibility based on the precedent set at this time. So knowing that I am a resident here, that I brought my family, I've actually started a business. These are things that I do because I love this community and I see myself in a future and my family's future here because of what is supposed to be about community. And I know I don't have stake in that section, but I have stake in the community. And I think it's important that everybody understand what it means to set a precedent. So I yield my time to anybody else. And once again, Chair Rose, I know it's my right to speak here and I appreciate the ability to exercise that, but you've done a wonderful job, as well as Commissioner Snyder in the last meeting. I was very impressed with your thoroughness, and thank you for everybody who's had the patience to kind of go through something that seems very trivial and a foregone conclusion of being denied. But thank you for exercising and helping us exercise this right.
Thank you, and thank you for taking your time to come out and do this. I want to assure everyone we are here to listen. Nothing is a foregone conclusion. So, but thank you for coming out. We really appreciate it. I'm going to move to.
Sorry, I know I have a bit of time left, and I know this might be kind of odd, but in the applicant room over there, there's an older gentleman. The mask is supposed to go over your nose, and that's something that I think I want to do for your health, as well as everyone else that might be in that room with you. A proper face mask where it is covering your entire face.
Thank you. Molly Novak, do you wish to make public comment?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Tell me, do you live within 250 feet of this property?
I do not. I used to.
Okay, but you do not at this point. Okay.
Not at this time.
We're going to then hold you to 5 minutes and would ask you to give us what's on your mind.
Awesome. Good evening. My name is Molly Novak. I currently live on South Hawthorne here in Elmhurst. I grew up in Elmhurst at 270 West Eggleston, next door to two of the lots in question. And in anticipation of tonight's meeting, I contacted a distinguished research professor of urban planning at UCLA. Some of you in city planning and those sorts of things may know a Mr. Donald Shoup. He's a very distinguished professor. In my correspondence with him, he stated that the proposed commercial use of land is placing the importance of parking over the importance of people. We must not allow this to happen or occur. Cities all over the world are prioritizing people over parking. The reallocation of urban spaces has become one of COVID-19's or the pandemic's most tangible effects on the city environment. Elmhurst should strive to be at the forefront of this new future. Given the choice, people value open space and parks more than parking lots. The more we focus on providing excess storage for vehicles, the less space there is for outdoor dining and a tiny bit more of an environmental problem that we are leaving to my daughters and many other children's generation. I urge you to keep Elmhurst on the right side of environmental history and not set a dangerous precedent. When I wrote my first draft of my remarks for tonight, I had my husband read it. He advised me to remove most of the content because it came from a place of anger. I did that and rewrote this. But to tell the truth, I am angry. I am angry that there could be cars parking mere inches from where my daughter will play in her grandparents' yard. I am angry that there are vacant offices with feral cats living in them behind my parents' house. And there are many other variances and ordinances that have been against this applicant for many, many years. And that would take many, many nights of deliberation and just people being able to attest to that. I am angry that there are vacant offices in all of Spring Road that are taken by, that are owned by this individual. And the correct decision today is the same as it was in 2002 when this last came to board. We cannot allow a private business to ruin our neighborhood. Council members, I leave you with one last thought. You are all citizens of Elmhurst, elected by your neighbors, and because we believe in you to do the right thing, ask yourselves, if this was your house in question, would you vote to put a parking lot next door? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Novak. I do want to correct you. We are not council members and we are not elected. We are an appointed body. So just so you are aware, just want to make sure you understand that we are not the city council. In fact, maybe this is a good time to acknowledge this is the first step of a 3-step process. We are an appointed body. Our job is to look at really all requests, and conditional uses, much like variances, they are the law. So people can ask. It's certainly just as much their right to ask the city, can we get a conditional use? Can we get a variance? So they have to meet the criteria for both of those, and it is our responsibility as a commission to make a determination of that. However, it then is going to move to the Development Planning and Zoning Committee of the City Council. That is a group of 3 elected officials. They will look at it. They'll overlook what we have done here. They'll look at our recommendation. They'll also add probably policy pieces in that to determine that. But they're not the final decision makers on this either. It will then go to the City Council. The 14 people and the mayor of Elmhurst who sit around this dais, they are the elected officials. They will be the final decision makers around this. So it's a long process, and it's really important to me that you all understand the process, because that's where your voices are going to get heard if you understand the process. So I just wanted to make those comments clear. So I'm going to go to Bill Fergus. Bill Fergus, would you like to give public testimony tonight?
Yes, I'd like to just say a few words.
Bill, can you tell me, do you live within 250 feet of this project?
I do not live within 250 feet. I live a few blocks away on Rex Boulevard in Elmhurst.
Okay, so we're going to ask you to keep your comments to 5 minutes then.
Sure. So the last few years, I've been an Elmhurst resident for about 10 years. The last few years, I've seen increasingly a lot of flooding. I've seen Spring Road. I've waded through Spring Road myself to help local businesses and people. I'd have to wade through Spring Road to actually get to some of the people on Eggleston that have spoken earlier. I've heard so I think one of the first pieces of feedback that I have is just the argument that the lots are going to help mitigate water. I don't understand how that actually is going to work. The argument that if other houses were to build there, they'd have to develop units that would be unrealistic to mitigate the water according to code. To me, that means that there's probably a third option of that land could be used for something that would benefit the community as a whole versus a parking lot. So that'd be a question I would want to have. What other alternatives are there outside of just a parking lot for residential that maybe haven't been considered? The other piece that I would like to throw out there's been a lot of really great points. I don't want to reiterate them, but the piece that I want to call attention to is just during this year, in a pandemic year, on uncertain times, I've seen locally a lot of the restaurants barely survive by the support of the community. Coming to the restaurant. I know Roberto's is one of those restaurants that has had to adopt quickly and transform, and the community stood up and rose to the occasion to help these locations survive through unprecedented times. My question is, as we're sitting here hearing how the community are concerned for their future, the community that supported restaurants like Roberto's, how can you stand there and talk about the money that's been invested in these lots that go unoccupied, the studies that you've had to invest in to kind of look at the engineering areas, just to me, it feels very, it just doesn't feel appropriate for the times we're in when everybody's struggling. And it feels you're trying to change our community, the community that's supporting restaurants like Roberto's. And I would just be curious to hear from the applicant, how do you rationalize being able to put the local community in such a tricky spot, difficult spot, knowing that's also the community that's supporting restaurants like Roberto's? And that's my statement for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Fergus. Thanks for your thoughtful comments, and thank you for coming to the meeting. Mr. Buss, am I saying your name correctly? You're muted, Mr. Buss. Please unmute. Okay.
Chair Rose, if I may be recognized.
Yes.
Daniel.
Yes.
Mr. Buss is a civil engineer retained by my clients and has a range of pages within the PowerPoint that I happen to have on my screen here. I noted it did not make it up to board docs this evening, but he's got the first 10 or 11 pages, which have been submitted, and his reports are part of that.
Okay, Mr. Buss, I'm going to ask you, I know you do not live within 250 feet of this project.
No, I do not.
But you are representing someone who does live within 250 feet of this project?
Yes, I was retained, my firm was retained, Semcon Limited, by the Elmhurst Neighbors United Group to address certain issues regarding stormwater management and other technical issues regarding this conditional use.
Yeah. Can I just ask you, would it be okay if I'm going to move to some other folks who really might, from the community first, who've got some statements to make that might make some more sense that for us to go ahead and do that and then come back around to you?
I agree.
Okay, I think it does. So thank you. Thanks for your flexibility in that. Gwen, would you like to give testimony on this matter?
I would. Thank you.
Excellent. Gwen, can you tell me, do you live within 250 feet
I
of the
do.
project? Okay.
Yeah. And Chair Rose, I have some questions and then I have a statement that I wrote.
Okay, please.
Okay. So when we talk about stormwater, the sewer in front of my home is always charged. Water's coming out every single time we have a storm event. And usually I'm up to my knees in water trying to protect my home, which they're trying to put a parking lot right next to. So with the system already charged, my question is, how does this plan work when the system already has too much water in it? That says to me it's going to end up in my home and in my backyard. So that's my first question.
Okay.
The next question I have is, what is the plan to keep my children safe? I have a 5 and an 8-year-old. As you heard earlier, I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old next door to me. What does that look like from a traffic perspective and people being overserved and coming out late at night? That's a concern for me. My question for Pasquale and Vito is, why have you not been good neighbors? And why haven't you come to us? You have my husband's cell phone number. You've seen the water issues we've had to deal with. Why not be a good neighbor and come over and talk to us first? Right now in one of their parking lots, there are trailers, cars. If parking is such an issue, why isn't all that stuff moved away and those parking spots made available to the customers that need parking for your restaurant? I don't see in the plan, but I've heard that water vaults are being considered. Who's going to pay for the water vaults? Where does that come? Is that taxpayer money? Is that your money? Whose money is that? I'd like to know the answer to that. And with the challenge of code compliance, my understanding is if this passes, these are private parking lots. So if there's any issues, fence falling down, lights, trash, flooding, pumps not working, that we would have to call and do code violations. I've lived in my home 8 years. In 8 years, the very first code compliant issue that is not even a Roberto's issue that we've been complaining about finally got taken care of. So it's taken 8 years. So my concern is, if this goes in and we need to have something fixed or addressed, I don't want it to take 8 years to have it fixed. I shouldn't have to live next to that for 8 years to have it fixed. So those are all my questions. If you bear with me while I read my comment, I'm nervous.
Of course. Just take your time. You're doing great. So
thank you. Okay. So I put here, first I want to thank all of you for hearing the public comments. As you know, my name is Gwen Eisenminger. I'm here tonight as a concerned mother, neighbor, and impacted Elmhurst resident. My husband and I have 2 beautiful daughters. When I think about living directly next to a parking lot, what it would look like, I think about the safety of my girls and the other children in the neighborhood. I think about someone being overserved and driving into my home and hitting my gas meter that is also directly where the parking spots would be. I think about my girls playing in the backyard, someone driving through the barrier and hitting one of them. I think about trying to put my girls to bed at night and the noise they will hear from the people trying to get in their cars and all of the rowdiness. I think about the increased traffic and the increased number of delivery drivers that already do not take caution when driving through the neighborhood. As a matter of fact, they like to drive on the sidewalk when it rains. I think about car lights and overhead lights shining directly into our windows. I think, who will ever want to purchase my home? Because we've been told we're losing a ton of money on our investment. I think about our house flooding. This past spring, I remember my husband telling me to get whatever I could carry out of the basement. We were going to take on water. It was only a 25-year flood storm. It was 1 a.m, and we were frantically trying to protect our home. When we moved in 2013, we experienced a 100-year storm. And that time we did take on sewer water, as a matter of fact. Thankfully, during the 25-year storm, we didn't get water, but it was really close. I think, where will all the water go if the green area is gone? How much worse will it get? I think about if there's a parking lot issue and the applicant has not helped once over the years. I think about the neighborhood overall impact negatively and how it will change the character. I think about the message it sends to all Elmhurst residents about creating parking in residential neighborhoods. I looked at all the documentation on board docs, but came very short on answers on these thoughts and questions. I think, why would Elmhurst even consider this, even when it's clear it does not benefit the neighborhood at all? I think about our dream of raising our family in this amazing community and feeling now like we're getting pushed out. We do not live in harmony with commercial, when commercial only wants to hurt the neighborhood. I would invite all of the commissioners to please come out and see it. It makes a huge difference when you walk the properties, when you see how close they're going to be to our homes and how this is going to change our neighborhood. Thank you, Chair Rose.
thank you very much. And just to let you know, that's actually part of our process, which is my guess is every single commissioner, I know I have been, if you've seen my car driving up and down your road, you might have been suspicious, but that we really, that's one of the practices we really all try to do, because you are correct. Actually going and seeing a place is very different from just looking at it on a piece of paper. So I just want to give you some sense of confidence that that's what the commissioners do. So
I am so glad to hear that. Thank you so much.
So don't call the police on me next time. Okay? It'd be great. All right. Thank you so much.
You.
Mr. and or Ms. Blair, do you have comments to make, either one or both of you?
This is a rare evening. She's going to let me speak for us.
Okay.
Woo-hoo.
Okay. So my name is Ken Blair, and I'm here with my wife, Sarah. We reside at 262 West Eggleston, Unit D, and we appreciate the opportunity to be heard on this matter. The proposed parking lot design on the south side places it 5 feet from the west lot line for the Wild Meadows Trace townhouses. Our home is the westernmost unit, so we stand to be directly impacted by this if it were to come about. We don't want it, and we don't buy the applicant's nonsense that our home value and the quality of the neighborhood environment won't be negatively impacted. Moving here in just June of 2020, we knew nothing of the history of previous denied applications for this parking use. And frankly, we weren't sure what to make of this when we did hear. Our neighbors reported a history of poor relationships with the restaurant, and it was evident that the restaurant had not kept the back of their business property up. They have extremely bright lights up behind the building currently, such that Sarah was able to read a book outside our front door at night. Complaints about this haven't led to any change. I've sent 2 previous communications which are posted on board docs to the commission. My detailed concerns are in them, and I urge the commissioners to carefully review the letters from Mike Pusich, who spoke earlier, our property manager at Wild Meadow Trace Townhomes. He speaks for all 13 of us owner residents. I further urge careful review of the correspondences from Thomas Diamond, as his refutation of the applicant's assertions on property value impact seems quite thorough. It's become clear there seems to be an open secret that Roberto's really wants to put in some sort of expansive banquet facility. People have said to me, everybody knows about that. Though the applicant seems reluctant to disclose this, there's no new impetus for more parking at this point in time. A banquet facility would magnify all the negatives that have been brought up by the neighborhood. As has been said, the comprehensive plan advises collaborative development with the neighborhood. Nothing should be done on this matter, as far as I'm concerned, until a valid plan for flood mitigation is first implemented. Planning is one thing. It should be implemented before a lot or other changes are made that then might have to be undone. Nothing can be done next door to my home until possible asbestos is addressed. Should this project ever move forward, the city must require, I would ask that the commission tell the city that Roberto's has to meet with impacted neighbors to develop a livable plan, unlike the after the fact rushed meeting I attended immediately before the January 20th zoning commission meeting. Chair Rose, you commented on the trees and the thoughtful planning that went into the parking lot for Elmhurst University, where my wife used to work. Something like that, that type of approach, if this should move forward, ought to happen. So we appreciate the commission's time and your service to your neighbors in Elmhurst, and that's my comment.
Thank you very much. Okay. I just want to go back and check. Mr. Figueroa, were you sworn in by the court reporter when we started? I'll check back with them. Okay. Mr. Kent, would you like to make public comment, give testimony at this point?
Yes, thank you. I'm just going to read a quick statement.
Can I ask you, do you live within 250 feet?
Just a little bit further than that. I live on Hillside in Douglaston.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. My name is Tom Kent. I live at 332 West Hillside. I just want to state I'm vehemently opposed to this parking lot venture. I think it doesn't make any sense for the neighborhood at all. The traffic around here is bad enough as it is, especially that little stretch of Eggleston there, which I travel daily as my kids live at Eggleston in Washington. So it's sort of the route that I go, and you have to be very careful and diligent when you're driving it. I don't see a need for any more parking. There's always plenty of parking in the city lot across the street from Roberto's and on the street. I just don't fathom why you would need anything like that. It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, trying to get this change in the zone doesn't make any sense. And if it happens, it's gonna, as like what Mr. Figueroa said, it's gonna could have a change in the rest of Elmhurst and other areas. So I disagree with that a lot. And the study that was done during sort of this COVID time, I mean, how can it even be accurate as there's not as much traffic as there usually is? It just doesn't make any sense to me. And in closing, this proposal doesn't meet any of the 7 conditions, specifically number 3, that the establishment of the conditional use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding property. That's all my comments are. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your participation. Lauren, would you like to give testimony, public comment at this point? I will come back to that. Ms. Orth, Deborah Orth, would you like to give public comment?
I would, thank you. I do have a question.
Before you start, do you live within 250 feet?
My honest answer is I don't know, but it's got to be really close if I don't. And if they can count to their steps to their back door, I could probably count the steps to use the corner of my back lot, and it probably is within the 250 feet.
Okay,
but I'll try and be quick.
And were you sworn in?
I was sworn in.
Okay, please go ahead.
Are they expected to try and answer these questions tonight, or those coming at another time?
Let me just tell you, in order to get everyone, I think it's highly unlikely that they'll answer the questions tonight, that we will go. I mean, it's really important to hear from everybody. Yeah. And then we are going to obviously continue the public hearing at a later date. So,
okay, excellent.
But you know what? I'm taking notes. They're taking notes. I think so. And I know every commissioner is taking notes. So we won't forget any of these.
All right. Well, I'm just going to try and go fast. I submitted them an email, so you could always refer to them. I'm going to try and ditto as much as I can, but I probably went a little deeper on some of my questions, so I'm probably still going to add those to the ditto. But based on the presentation and making of the applicant's case in the last hearing, there were a few actions taken and responses given that have caused me to distrust your motives about the project at hand, and that you are not being forthcoming with your intentions and larger plans for which this may be a first step. The following questions will hopefully flesh that out a little bit more. So we covered about the fact that they talked about it not being a white tablecloth dining place twice in their presentation last time, but that begs further questions for me about understanding or having them explain. So please tell us what the various classifications a restaurant can have, and does Roberto's high turnover mean that it requires more parking than if it was a white tablecloth steakhouse, as you had described, which would be a lower turnover establishment? And if so, doesn't the higher turnover mean increased traffic? It seems to me that hurts your case on the traffic concern that most of us have. But I suppose to get the parking, it needs to be classified as such. What would it mean in terms of parking needs to have if you had a different classification? During the last hearing, an opinion was given that the current plan will, quote unquote, improve the water issue on the current properties. What is the evidence that the current functionality of water drainage will be able to take on the water from those parking lots? Who's responsible for this water mitigation, the city or city and taxpayers, or the applicant and property owner? What is different in your study that says more parking is needed and traffic won't increase versus the study the city sponsored around the same time? How did you determine the number of parking spots that are needed or that you are that short on? If you have a shortage of parking during the day, why can't the public parking spaces behind the building where docks is be limited? As it is now, don't high school students park there from approximately 7:25 in the morning to 3:30 in the afternoon? It seems to me there would be ample parking, or at least greatly improved parking availability for post-funeral lunches if those spots are opened up. Why not pursue changing the signage with the city about those spaces? I think a lot of people covered how many properties, asking the question, how many properties along the Spring Road Business District that either residential or commercial that are owned. I would just further ask, are there any other entities with which you are affiliated under a different name that owns other properties? Is the ownership of the building and business formerly known as Stemples affiliated with Roberto's? I think someone else did say that they thought that it was tonight. Someone also brought up the bank location and why not using that as a parking lot. If your current permits were approved, do you foresee a time when you would want to turn this commercial property into a parking lot? Why not start with that and see how it improves your parking shortage? Part of my distrust after the last hearing is I felt like you were trying to manipulate us by showing properties in their current state. They're not very landscaped and they are presented as if they are eyesores already. However, if true homeowners live in these residential lots and not people buying them with the hope to turn them into parking, I believe most owners would maintain the property and it would look nicer than under your ownership for these purposes. So turning them from residential lots into parking lots would not really be doing us a favor. How long have you owned these lots and what have you done to maintain them as residential lots? During the last hearing, you were asked if you had plans to expand your business and you mentioned perhaps making the kitchen a little bigger. Do you foresee a time that you want to build a banquet facility eventually? Do you have any thoughts, dreams, hopes for that? Have you had any plans designed? While the current permit is what it is, I think understanding how it fits into a master plan is important to this neighborhood. While it is a business district, it is very much a neighborhood business and district. You are not along a corridor of large-scale strip malls and big box retailers. There has been so much development in downtown Elmhurst with parking garages in close proximity. Have you explored opening a banquet facility there? Even with the number of spots you are requesting with this permit, you testify that you are at a deficit of 56 spots. Why then would you be, quote, considering expanding operations for large parties and events, as you said testified in the last hearing, even a little bit if there is not enough parking to support your current business? These parking lots will be privately owned and maintained, I believe resurfacing, snow removal, etc., by you, the applicant. Is that correct? Will you be renting these spots to York High School students to park in during the day? What is the cost to the city if these permits are approved? And then I think that covers all of my questions, and the rest would probably be really duplicative of what was said earlier. And then I just want to finish with my public comment. If I had the chance to hear some answers, maybe it would change my opinion, but I'm going to just give you my statement as if my opinion has not changed. I wish that the only difficult decision I had to face when it comes to Roberto's continue to be the same one that I have had for the last 23 years, which is whether to order the vegetable lasagna or the rotolo. Until you're one of my favorites, so I want you to know I support Roberto's. But until the hearing on January 20th, I wasn't sure how strongly I felt about these issues and came in with an open mind to learn more. After hearing the sworn testimony of the applicants, I have a sense of distrust in the motivations and responses given that night, which have caused me to raise great concern and at this point be against the approval of the permit in question. Years ago, Elmhurst was given the title of the quintessential community and was an ideal place to live. What drew me to living in this little nook of Elmhurst by the Spring Road Business District was that I still had a sense of living in the city, yet having the benefit of being in the suburbs. The fact that I could walk to a dry cleaner's, bank, bakery, bar, vet, and convenience store, and my new favorite pizza place and restaurant was very appealing. I had the best of both worlds, a little city feel and my quaint suburban neighborhood feel. As the decades have gone by, two things are certain. It has become increasingly more difficult to turn off of Eggleston onto Spring Road due to the enormous line of cars. This is true at peak times even during COVID. More traffic is not welcome and changes the character of the neighborhood. Let's not make it worse. And the water collects more in my yard and creeps closer to my home every year. Taking residential lots and turning them into parking lots is not what our quintessential community is about. It is not what our Spring Road Business District is about. The permit should not be approved. At the very least, I ask the Commission not to move forward with approving these permits without the following three requirements: an exact water mitigation plan at the property's owner's expense to deal with taking an open space and covering it. If they are going to be allowed to do that, they have to be responsible for improving the current water issues and not just putting more runoff into a system that is already an issue. 2, a traffic study during non-COVID times is to fully understand increased traffic. And 3, landscaping and fencing plans must be approved by neighbors before any further plan is approved. If after plans formally and fully address these issues, a permit can be requested again, and we can go through this process again. Finally, even with all these requirements, it seems to me that to maintain the character of Elmhurst and the little neighborhood business district that it is, more parking and more traffic is not welcome nor appropriate. Let's not set a precedent for our wonderful community of Elmhurst to turn residential lots into parking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Noyce, would you like to give public testimony at this point? You are muted, so I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Yep.
There you go.
Just did. Okay.
Do you live within 250 feet of this project?
Yes, my wife and I, my lovely wife Helga and I live at 266 West Eggleston, which is directly adjacent to where they're going to build a parking lot.
Okay, and were you sworn in? I believe you were.
I
I just want to confirm that you were. Okay, please tell us, give us an idea what's on your mind.
Okay, well, in keeping with your very sensible suggestion that we not constantly repeat what the other person said, I completely subscribe to all these problems that people have highlighted about traffic, about danger to children, and everything else. But I'd like to emphasize something about the nature of a banquet hall as opposed to a restaurant. It's not just that people are coming at the same time and leaving at the same time, or approximately the same time. It's the fact that, especially if the host of that particular event that's being held in the banquet hall is providing an open bar, they can be very, very noisy and disruptive affairs, banquet halls, and spill out into the street and into our neighborhoods. So I would be very hesitant to ever say a banquet hall is just another type of restaurant. It's not, it's a different business, and people go there very often to party. And as far as the flood goes, I'm in terror of that. Not that I have, like some of the others, experienced floods. We've lived here 22 years. It was a new build when we bought it. And in those 22 years, we've never had a real flood, but we don't want it to start. And I would love to see, as a former speaker suggested, some form of legally enforceable edict that says that they must be responsible for damage to the surrounding properties if their water runs off and floods our place in the that it hasn't done in the last 22 years. Thank you. I yield my time back to everybody else.
Thank you very much, Mr. Noyce. Mr. Diamond, would you like to give public testimony at this point?
I will. I have been sworn in, and I live more than 250 feet from the proposed parking lots.
So you do not live within 250 feet of the lot,
I do
correct?
not.
Okay, so we're going to ask you to keep your comments to 5 minutes then.
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Rose and other commissioners. During the first public hearing, I thought Chairman Rose asked an apt question, which is, if the parking study shows that there's an underserved need of, between say 45 and 200 parking spaces, where are all those people parking? And I have a pretty good answer to that question. A few of the theoretical excess parking would probably park in the spaces along the Prairie Path on Prairie Path Lane, but not very many of them, but that would only handle 16 or 17 spaces at the most. A few people might park east of Spring Road on Eggleston, but that's a difficult area to park because there are a lot of driveways there, and the area for parking really is not very ideal. Having lived in this neighborhood for over 35 years, I'm pretty sure I know where they would park. They would go west of Spring Road on Eggleston, and they would be parking on Eggleston or Hillside or Fairfield, or perhaps even down to Hawthorne. If that was happening, two things would be true. Number one, I would have seen it. over the last 5 years that I've lived here, I would have seen it at some point. I have not. The other thing that would be true is that it would have been a topic of conversation between myself and my neighbors. I have had no such conversations. None of my neighbors have been complaining about spillover parking from the businesses on Spring Road. And I know my neighbors. If this was a problem, they would be complaining about it. People in this neighborhood where I've lived for 35 years have complained about students parking from York on our streets. That's why we have signs on most of our streets that limit parking to 2 hours during school hours. People in this neighborhood have complained about parking associated with the York football games. I know that my neighbors, this would have been a topic of conversation. It has not been. And those are facts that if Mr. Day and others would like to cross-examine me on, I'm happy to be cross-examined. The idea that there is a parking deficit with the current operations at Roberto's is simply a fiction. It is not true. And because of that, and for all the other reasons that have been stated in the several letters that I have written to the commission, this conditional use permit should be denied. I would also ask that the applicant address the questions that I put on their stormwater documents in my letter of, in my letter of January 19th at pages 2 to 3. And that is all I have. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. I'm going to move now to Mike Novak. Mike, would you like to make a statement and give testimony?
Yes, I would.
Do you live within 250 feet of this project?
I do not.
Okay. Were you sworn in?
I was.
Okay. Well, we'd like to then hold you to the 5-minute comment period.
Sounds good.
Great.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Novak, and I live on Hawthorne Avenue. And while I'm not 250 feet from the project, my daughter's grandparents are. So this is something that is near and dear to my heart, especially as I'm walking to their house, maybe not every day, but pretty close. While conditional use zoning has been approved in the past, a change of this magnitude is generally only seen for something that benefits the general community as a whole, a nursing home or a hospital, a church or a school. This is none of those. This is a private business, and it's a business that has been a valued part of the community for a long, long time. But this time, Roberto's is going too far. They're asking to devalue the community because they want more parking at the expense of our neighborhood and our environment. During the last meeting, Pasquale said, and I quote, "We desperately need parking to serve the needs of our customers," end quote. Talking to my next door neighbors who have been frequent customers of Roberto's for at least 30 years and probably longer, I never got the impression that there was a lack of parking. So I went online to search for reviews that mentioned it. And between Google reviews, TripAdvisor, and Yelp, there are 805 reviews for Roberto's, overwhelmingly positive about the restaurant. Only 12 of those mentioned the parking situation, and here are those 12 reviews. And I'm reading the parts that mention parking verbatim. From December 2006, we live a couple blocks away from here, and it is always difficult to park around here on weekends as people are always in and out. From November 2009, free parking is easy. From September 2010, this was a baby shower. Street parking was easy, and there was a free lot across the street too. A perfect choice for a luncheon. I'd certainly host an event at Roberto's. From May 2014, good neighborhood parking and nice ambiance. From June 2014, we were so impressed with the decor. The town was welcoming. The parking was great. From May 2016, offers plenty of parking and takeout service. We recommend Roberto's to everyone. From August 2016, I would definitely come again. Parking is a little scarce, so consider delivery if you have a choice. September 2016, the neighborhood is impressive. Parking was available in a lot across the street and on the street as well. February 2017, close to home, easy parking, and a nice wine list. March 2017, plenty of parking on the street or in the lot across the street, but they also offer valet parking. I understand that may not be the case now. Perhaps they should consider it again. October 2019, a funeral luncheon, clean with plenty of parking across the street. And from July of 2020, can't wait to go back. Great outdoor dining under a canopy with a view of a park instead of the now common parking lot. So that's 2 reviews that said the parking is at times difficult. 10 said that there was no problem with the parking situation. 793 reviews did not mention it at all. During the last meeting, on the recording of it, at the 2-hour, 27-minute mark of the meeting, Pasquale gave an example of customers who couldn't find parking, and he stated that, quote, "We were actually at full capacity at the time," end quote. So despite their supposed desperate need for parking, they were able to fill the restaurant to capacity. This hardly sounds like a desperate need, as Pasquale stated. I'm just not seeing it. I will end by saying that as a relative newcomer to Elmhurst, I moved here. My wife is from here, but I'm not. I'm not getting a warm feeling from all of this. We're getting conflicting stories from the applicants. For example, Mr. Scott Day stated at the 1-hour, 37-minute mark that, quote, "We are not increasing our customers," end quote. He goes on to say that this is for existing customers and employees. Pasquale goes on to state that they are in fact looking to increase their customers starting at the 2:27 mark and continuing on for a few minutes. We are now hearing that supposedly they want to shoehorn a banquet hall there. Why are they not upfront about this? If the banquet hall is not the truth, they should state on the record under oath that they will not open a banquet hall facility at their current location. Roberto's is trying to force a square peg into a round hole, and we cannot let them ruin our neighborhood. That's all I have to say. Thank you for allowing me my right.
Thank you. Let me ask whoever is under Kevin's iPad if you are interested in giving any public testimony at this point. Seeing no response, I'm going to go to Rita's iPad. Are you interested in giving public testimony at this point?
Thank you. Yes, I am, Chairman.
Okay, great.
Sorry, I'm at work, so I'm trying to listen.
You're a hardworking woman. It's almost 9:15 and you're at work.
I know. So
can you tell me, do you live within 250 feet?
Probably just a little bit more, but I have a different perspective because I live off the city lot.
Okay, and were you sworn in, Rita?
Avenue. Yes,
Rita, were you sworn in? Okay.
I was, yes.
Okay.
So, and you know, I read all the documents and I went on the neighborhood site and really read what their fears were. And I really could say a lot of their fears will come true. I live off the city lot. I get 4 feet, truly 4 feet of water in my yard. I have a pool in the back. It goes right up to the top. It's a 4-foot pool. It goes through my neighbor's yard, into my yard, and then into the yard next door. And I think Otis brought up property value. And actually, I was approached by the city this year about selling my property to them. And when I said to the consultant, well, that's $20,000 on your high end, what you would pay me below my property value. And he said, well, Rita, your yard floods. And I said, well, you're mistaken. My yard does not flood. I said, what happens is the city sewers behind the properties, we're all, you know, see the businesses on Spring Road, but in the alley behind the property, the sewer right alongside our yard flows into the 3 yards there and floods our yard constantly. And so, yes, that's a very real fear that they have. Their property value, he told me, nope, you flood. You won't get that. And I said, I don't flood from water coming out of the sky. I flood from water coming up out of your sewers. I've lived there for 28 years. And I would say the first time I flooded was that terrible rain in 2013 in April, and every year since then. And I think that's about the same time they fixed South Spring Road. So I asked Scott Levin at the time, did you just place this water or what? And he said, we're trying to figure that out. And they still have not figured it out. So before you do that to another group of people on Eggleston Avenue, I would say for one person, one business to benefit is just not worth it.
Thank you very much, Rita. And
You're
I hope you go home soon.
Me too. Thank you.
Here, Rose, can we get Rita's last name, please?
Rita, what is your last name?
Last name is Lindstrom, Lindstrom.
Thank you.
And I did call too to speak to the engineer to ask him a few questions about some of the things that were in the reports, but I have not gotten a call back. So if I could just say real quickly to the commissioners, because everything is, when you read things, site-specific flood plan would be better than code compliant. So really look into those with the city engineer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Oh, you're welcome.
Shannon Kelly, would you like to give testimony at this point?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, great. Grant Dungan, sorry. Would you like to give testimony at this time? Don't hear anything. Jessica Noonan, would you like to give testimony? At this point?
No, thanks. I think Grant's actually ready.
Grant Dungan, would you like to give testimony? Go ahead. Would you like to give testimony?
Sorry about that, Chairman Rose. Little technical difficulty. I'm on Mark Daniels. Turn the sound off.
Which one are you on? You're wherever you are, you're unmuted. Or you're muted.
Sorry, go ahead and start. You can start. Okay.
Okay, Mr. Dungan, can you tell me, do you live within 250 feet of this project, and were you sworn in?
I was not sworn in.
You will have to be sworn in then. And anyone else right now who wishes to give public testimony but was not, could you please raise your right hand and be sworn in? I'm going to ask the city attorney to please swear you in. Okay.
I believe you need the court reporter to do that, Chairman Rose.
I did, yes. I just asked her if she would.
No, you just asked the city attorney to do it. That's okay.
This is why we end at 10 o'clock. I'll just tell you that. So can I ask the court reporter to please swear them in? Thank you. Keep me honest. I like it.
Okay, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank
you. Okay. All right. Mr. Dungan.
Yes, thank you so much for your time. And I guess, Chairman Rose, I do live within 200 feet of the proposed project.
Okay. All righty.
I will start with some questions, and then I will go into a statement, okay?
Okay.
My first questions are, how much money has the city spent with Christopher Burke? Who owns Spaceco? Is there a relationship, special relationship in any way between Spaceco and Christopher Burke? Is Christopher Burke the only engineering firm that could be available for doing what they've been doing? Is Spaceco the only firm that would be available for what they're doing? Is there any conflict of interest by any means? Also have some questions. Did Mr. Scott Day ask Mr. Levin to be involved in where he was calling our lawyers? I'm going to now go into a statement.
Okay.
My last question was because my attorney, Bill Graff, told me in 33 years in all the states and all the cases he's done, this has never happened before. Where a sitting older person's calling him and asking him questions, also saying certain things. Now I want to get into the history of Vito Marisi owning property on Eggleston. Over 2 decades ago, he bought a red log cabin. It's now an empty lot. He then put people in there. City of Elmhurst ran the water. They thought somewhere around 15 to 20 people were living in there. We then had fistfights. We had the cops come. We had people sleeping on the roof. We had people having open fires out front. We then had a gentleman sexually harass the next door neighbor. And they moved to the Martins. They moved to another part of town. Nothing much was done about it. We never received an apology to anyone in the neighborhood. They then bulldozed it, hired Inskeep, and then they tried to rezone in our neighborhood, just like they are now. They tried to zone bust us, and that's all this is. They then, not too long ago, got the White House because the city threatened to fine the White House because it wasn't up to code. So they settled the trust. Unfortunately, they did not follow their parents' dying words, was to never sell to Vito Marisi. It was troubling that they got it. We figured now that they own 2 houses on the block, they'd knock on some doors and introduce themselves and say hi. Didn't happen. They only have came to our door twice in over 20 years because they want something. They're poor neighbors. They never shovel their drive. They never shovel their sidewalk. Their driveway, forget about it. We are a neighborhood where we go to other people's weddings. We watch each other's kids. We have holidays together. We have the keys to each other's houses. We borrow people's cars. They're the weirdos of the block. And we're, quite frankly, tired of it. I don't know why they're doing this. And I can say that now that we have Elmhurst Neighbors United, where we have over 300 members, we're gaining more every single day. Before I asked Pasquale, he probably shouldn't go forward with this. He probably shouldn't do this. But we're ready for it. And with that, I leave it my time to the floor. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. I want to caution everyone that I really want to discourage any disparaging comments, not comments, but names. There'll be no name calling here about anybody. The applicant, anyone who says anything, I really want to discourage you for that. This has been a tremendously civil group of people who might agree or disagree on things. So that's just not necessary for us here. Thank you. Mr. Mojek, Rick Mojek, do you want to give testimony?
Yes, sorry about that. Yes.
That's okay. Tell me, do you live within 250 feet of the project?
I do not.
You do not. Were you sworn in? I just saw you sworn in.
Yeah, I wasn't at the start. I had to put the kids to bed, so I missed the first. Yeah.
Good. You got to. So, all right. We'll hold you to 5 minutes then, please.
I really won't need 5 minutes. I just kind of just comment to more or less of what everybody else is saying about. I was on the call the call last month about the additional 55 spots and their occupancy being 210. Kind of just didn't make sense, and kind of hearing more and more about the testimony kind of just didn't make sense. And then obviously hearing others talk about how it'll impact their value of their homes and their safety of their children. I've been in Elmhurst since 2008. And the reason why I came to Elmhurst is for the community, not not more or less for the business. Now I do work in a business in Elmhurst, which is it's convenient for me, but it's also for the sense of community that I have here and the people here, and the neighbors that do right by others. So just as far as the testimony from Roberto's, I have nothing really against Roberto's. Fine establishment. It's unnecessary in the neighborhood, and it'll set a precedent for other business owners to buy up land and make parking lots that are not necessary. So I appreciate the
testimony on this case at this time.
Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Michael Mandu, would you want to give testimony at this time? I can't hear you.
No.
Okay, great. Thank you. Bridget Kelly, would you like to give testimony at this time? Okay. I'm not hearing anything. Scott Schultz, would you like to give testimony at this point?
No, thank you.
Okay. Again, I can't remember who PPLLC is, but would you like to give testimony at this point?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay. Sully Tiger, would you like to give testimony at this point? Hearing nothing.
Excuse me, Chairman. This is PPLC again, Glenn at InDevCon.
Yes.
Yes. Would it be okay if I ask a few questions?
Okay. Do you live within?
I do not, and I have already been sworn in.
Okay. You have 5 minutes then.
Okay. I just have a couple of questions. There's been some concerns raised by the Elmhurst Neighbors United about some possibly buried asbestos on the property. And I was told that we were going to be allowed to do some drilling and sampling over there. Is that going to be allowed? Is that going to happen? I'm asking the applicants, I guess, in this regard. Am I proper?
You'll have to wait until I'm asking them to hold all the questions and answer them after we hear from everybody.
Okay. I will yield my time back to you then. Thank you very much.
Okay, sure. Mr.
Glenn's last name, please.
Glenn, what is your last name from DevCon?
Hofer, H-O-F-E-R.
Glenn Hofer?
Hofer, H-O-F-E-R.
I got you.
Okay.
I got you. Thank you. Mr. Sully Tiger, I haven't heard anything, so I'm assuming no. Marcia, would you like to give testimony at this point? Not hearing anything. And then TPL 4494. Would you like to give testimony at this point? Not hearing anything. Jessica Noonan. I think Jessica, I may have asked you, but I'm going to ask again. Do you want to give testimony at this point?
No, thank you. I think everything's been covered.
Okay. Lue Abuna, would you like to give testimony at this point?
People to know that I'm invested in.
I'm with the development team, so I will answer questions later.
That's what I thought. Okay. Mr. Daniel, I think everyone else has had, is there anyone else who wanted to give testimony but was unable to? Oh, Heike Knorp. You need to be sworn in. I don't believe you were sworn in.
Correct.
Okay, I'm going to have to ask the court reporter to swear you in, but I'm also going to ask you, do you live within 250 feet of the project?
I do not.
Okay, so can you please raise your right hand and the court reporter will swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony about you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we live really close to the neighborhood and to Roberto's, and we have a lot of delivery drivers already speeding along our lines. So we live off Seminole, where there is already a lot of speeding happening. speed bumps won't be really an option because it's one of the alternate routes for the fire department from the South Fire Station to actually avoid the St. Charles York intersection. So just thinking about if there would be bigger events happening, which would require over 50 parking spots during daytime, especially during the week, I could see our traffic increase by a lot just because people would want to avoid the Lincoln School District. They would not want to come from York High School because there would be speed limits going on, and they would actually start going through the neighborhoods. Also, I have small children. They want to ride their bikes on the streets. Around like as soon as it's getting busier, around 5 o'clock, I would be very hesitant to allow my children who are less than 10 to even like think about going close to the streets because the drivers pretty often speed a lot there already. Thinking of having people coming from events who might have had a couple glasses of wine too many, which is not supposed to happen, but still does happen, I think would be very detrimental to the neighborhood and the safety of children and even of adults. Because Eggleston is an area where people pretty often speed because they know that there are stop signs from the north-south connections, and it's just a straight shot over east-west. Also, flooding is a huge concern in general, and I have helped Eisenmanger's pump that lot pretty much like into the sewer system off like around 10 o'clock a couple times at night, just so that their house wouldn't flood again in case there would be another storm coming. So seeing that actually that would be not an impermeable like surface or a surface which could not hold any water, I think would be detrimental for the whole neighborhood, not only for the Eisenmanger lot, but just for the other lots also. I think that's pretty much it. I think also Elmhurst is, I had the feeling as a very progressive like suburb. We want to have like young families come here and join. I think people are trying to move away from cars. They're trying to go more towards, alternative modes for transportation, and adding more parking lots, I think, does not necessarily really enhance that picture and that feeling of Elmhurst. Also, the comprehensive plan was more for actually the community. How often does a community utilize actually a facility with over 200 spots for people, like a banquet hall? Like, yeah, maybe like an occasional baby shower, maybe a funeral, but I do have to admit, thank God not everybody's dying that often in my house or in my family. And at that point, like, it doesn't really add to the community. I think that's more bringing business from outside and traffic from outside of Elmhurst into Elmhurst and causing more congestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, and thank you for being in on this meeting. I will ask Mr. Daniel if he has any comments to make. My understanding, Mr. Daniel, is that you are representing some folks. Could you please let us know who you are representing in this particular case?
I am, Chair Rose. I'm also speaking as a resident, but as far as representation goes, I've got the Dungan family and I've got the Karen Heil Trust. The Dungan family is at 270 West Eggleston. 2 doors down and across the street, you'll find Karen, who's been on. I think her daughter's also been on. And then I also represent a not-for-profit that's been formed in relation to the project known as Elmhurst Neighbors United. We do have a civil engineer, Randy Buss, who you spoke to previously this evening, who's been on. We have a PowerPoint that has some slides in it that he would rely on for his testimony. If we could get that out of the way before I ask questions and proceed through the PowerPoint, that would be helpful. I'm not sure if you want to break before that or not.
We're not going to break. We have another 25 minutes, so we're going to go straight ahead with this. So if you, all right, Eileen, do you want to do, we're going to have him We'll have to share the screen. Hang on just a moment, Will. We're going to figure out how to do this.
So we also have we have the PowerPoint, I believe, loaded up on the screen in the applicant room, or we could share the screen with Mr. Daniel.
Let's do it. If this is loaded up in the applicant room, is that where this is coming from?
I'm sorry, public comment. My apologies.
Public comment room. Right. Let's do it this way. Okay. So, Mr. Buss, you'll just have to ask us to move the slides as it goes. You have 100 slides you want to show?
I do. There are exhibits and photographs that are mixed in with them, but it's not during Mr. Buss's testimony. He has the issues of civil design and stormwater that have been addressed in part in writing, and those are the first series of exhibits.
Okay.
The first page, if you can go to that, is his resume, his curriculum vitae.
Okay, I'm going to ask. There you go.
Randy, if you could proceed with an introduction and move through the slides with them, that would be terrific.
Very good. As I stated, my name is Randall Buss. I'm a licensed professional engineer with the state of Illinois with the firm of Semcon Limited, offices in Aurora, Illinois. I was retained by the Elmhurst Neighbors United and to provide some context for the technical aspects of the proposed parking lot additions, particularly in the realm of stormwater management. The first of the, in that capacity, I have issued 2 letters to Kent Johnson, city engineer and stormwater management administrator for the city, regarding the technical aspects of some of the proposals that I've reviewed. In those assessments of stormwater management, the first one I issued was on the early in January, and there were 6 exhibits, which I think we can bring up there quickly. The first one, without going into a lot of detail, the first one consisted of the conditional use application itself. And I won't go into any of the details in particular, but except to make 2 points. The one is that the conditional use permit, the standards for issuance, contains 7 standards. The most important one, D, is that adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and/or necessary facilities have been or are being provided. And also noteworthy in the petition, it states that the parking lots would be totally, fully code compliant for both stormwater management and drainage. Exhibit B to the assessment is the existing condition exhibit by Christopher B. Burke's office, which shows the extensive limits of flooding that have occurred in and around the Roberto's restaurant, and contains an assessment of the depth of flooding that has occurred both in the theoretical 100-year event and also the May 18th storm of record. Exhibit C.
Can I ask you which photos are which here? Just clarify for me.
Well, this is a photo.
Is May 18th or when is this?
These photos were contained in the brochure that was issued by the city of Elmhurst.
Okay.
To the residents about the flooding conditions, and I believe they demonstrate the flooding that occurred on that May 18th event.
Okay. Thank you.
But the other, there is a further exhibit that shows the extent of the flooding. It has both the limits of the, in blue, the 100-year event, and in green, the limits of the, there it is right there, the limits of the May 8, 2018 event.
Okay.
So in that in the assessment, I also provided, I cited various provisions of the DuPage County Ordinance, and in particular provisions pertaining to site-specific floodplains. And in that regard, you can see that this area that floods is quite extensive. This area does meet the definition of a site-specific floodplain under the ordinance, and as such would qualify as a regulatory floodplain, which under the provisions of the ordinance and the fact that Elmhurst is a partial waiver community would require review by DuPage County, DuPage County Stormwater Management. Exhibit E to the special, the plan is the plan by Spaceco, which indicates the limits of the parking lot, but does not provide any information as to the elevation, the planned elevation of the parking lot. This exhibit actually is the DuPage County GIS topographic survey, which shows the elevations and the extent of some of the large depressional areas that exist in and around the Roberto's restaurant, some of which are west of, a lot of which are west of Spring Road, which the women who spoke earlier referred to. In a lot of cases, that flooding is up to 4 feet or more. There was a second correspondence that I issued to Kent Johnson on June 26th. And in that, I again referred to the city's brochure that was sent out that consisted of 8 different pages, some of which show the limits, the actual photographs of the flooding that occurred in May, and also the extent of the watershed that is tributary to these depressional areas. And Mark, could you bring up that particular slide? Keep going. No, you had it up. You had it up earlier. Well, the slide shows, this is an exhibit that was contained in the report and prepared by Christopher Burke's office. There it is. That shows the extent of the watershed that's tributary to these depressional areas, amounting to some 390 acres, where the flooding that occurs is due primarily to the limitation in the stormwater system, where the runoff collects and ponds much quicker than it can be transported out. And so there is the stormwater flows by both overland flood means and by through the subsurface conveyance system, the storm sewers, and actually surcharges up out of those manholes that are in those depressional areas. So again, it certainly, in my mind, qualifies as a site-specific floodplain, and it has to abide by all of the regulations concerning floodplains, including compensatory storage and limitations on the depth of inundation that can be provided within the surface of parking lots. And so those issues would be addressed by DuPage County, and I don't think at this point in time they have been addressed. And it is somewhat doubtful in my mind that absent some major improvements to the drainage system as proposed in other reports by Christopher Burke's office, including subsurface storage vaults, additional storm sewer systems, and also additional pumping stations. Without those those improvements that would actually lower and remove surface water from those depressional areas and bring the flooding levels down, then these parking lots are going to be very tough to build. And the complying with the ordinances is going to be difficult and result in some cases, as I said earlier, the flood levels, the existing ground surfaces are 4 to 5 feet below the flood levels that have been predicted under current conditions. So we have a situation where I believe that the physical design of these parking facilities is questionable. The feasibility is questionable at this time without both further studies and further design features that would prove out that this can be done in accordance with the ordinance. That's the end of my testimony.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Rose. Thank you, Randy. If I may, Chair, on the issue of questions, I would like to ask if the applicant has performed a zoning compliance study with respect to 485 to 489 Spring Road once this development goes through. The same question remains as to 483 and 481 Spring Road. Those are all on the east side of Spring, south of Eggleston. On the part of Spring Road north of Eggleston, I would ask if the applicant has done a zoning compliance study to 469 Spring Road. They show a change in drive aisle and a change in parking spaces, and that zoning lot is actually becoming a bit smaller as a result of what's going on here. In that regard, there is a required transition strip of 16 feet width that should be planned, and that would occupy from the district line at least 40% of the 20-foot drive aisle that's shown on the east side of 469 Spring Road. Those are my questions about the zoning compliance analysis when it comes to those individual properties. With respect to the flooding, in light of Randy's testimony and his correspondence, I would ask that the applicant summarize for the members their discussions with DuPage County and their stormwater division on this issue of the site-specific planning under the circumstances here where this is such a seriously flooded area in Elmhurst, one that has been very difficult to find answers for. I would ask if they've gotten any prognosis on their options that they've discussed with the county. I would also ask them under oath to testify whether they agree or disagree with Mr. Buss's testimony on this issue, because we have a bit of a conflict in as much as Spaceco seems to agree with Randy in writing, yet James Bennison Associates has engaged in some review consulting work and seems to disagree with the applicant's own design firm. So I would ask that the applicant clarify that and under oath testify whether or not they are subject to county regulations as testified to by Mr. Buss. With regard to parking, and I don't want to repeat everything, I will say that I am a frequent patron at Roberto's. Never have had a problem. My primary route from my home at 125 Harbor Terrace is down Mitchell or Argyle to Eggleston and over. I think it's a community that I would hate to drive through if I had this project go in and I did not attempt to help the residents in this case. I would ask Louie Abuna to answer a few questions. With respect to Eggleston, what is the street width, and is there any plan for a left turn lane improvement for westbound Eggleston traffic onto Spring Road? I would ask whether anyone at KLOA has evaluated whether there is any single use that draws traffic into the reverse side of the blocks along Spring Road rather than drawing their main traffic directly from Spring Road. In this particular instance, I would ask KLOA to inform where they consider the main entrance of Roberto's to be, whether it is the front door off the southwest corner of the building on Spring Road or the back door. I would ask KLOA and SpaceCo to inform the members whether the ADA parking spaces are compliant with the Illinois Accessibility Code and the Environmental Barriers Act. Are there accessible routes into whatever this main entrance is? Is the main entrance on the southwest corner, in fact, handicapped accessible? It is not. Is the rear entrance handicapped accessible? It is not. But if you can answer those questions or confirm them for our planning for the within 300-foot rule, that would be terrific. When it comes to traffic and cut-through traffic, I would like to know whether KLOA has conducted any studies during a time period when either the Kensington operation was discharging students towards the end of the day, or York High School was letting out from after-school activities, or even during a football game. I would ask how many times KLOA has observed the circumstances when a train on the Canadian National Rail line is passing through and everything shuts down and you cannot make a left turn out in westbound Eggleston traffic onto southbound Spring without risking a head-on collision of someone who's trying to pull to the right and go east to avoid the train. In other words, there's no bypass. I would ask KLOA whether the parking lots are designed according to the Elmhurst codes. The south lot, is it fully curbed? Does it fully contain its own stormwater? Is it reliant upon an alley, and does the alley qualify as a means of primary access to the Roberto's property? By definition, I will note that your zoning ordinance says that an alley is secondary access. The alley is also secondary access to the businesses on Spring south of Eggleston that those involved in Roberto's have no interest in. So it is a prejudice to those individuals as well. The alley, which is public controlled, is becoming a driveway for Roberto's. Its parking is not separated from the alley. Its parking relies on the alley for all of its access. I think the question about the banquets is important. I would ask KLOA to provide to the members the parking demand for a banquet facility with an additional 3,200 to 4,000 square feet of space at Roberto's. Assume that there would be an addition eastward or a second floor added. And please provide the ratio and the impact on parking in the area. I would ask KLOA to provide their current parking analysis for Roberto's and the hours when KLOA believes Roberto's needs parking that is not available when the businesses on the west side of Spring close. With respect to the northeast corner of Spring and Eggleston, I would ask KLOA to inform the members how many parking spaces are required for operations on that property, assuming that it is a use similar to other uses along Spring Road or uses that are allowed in the C1 district, and to do the same for the existing use. I would ask KLOA to inform the members whether or not there is a reduction in parking as a result of the drive aisle and parking space realignment at the northeast corner of Spring and Eggleston. Trying to pour through the questions that were asked by others already. And you've got some really smart neighbors on this. With respect to the applicant in general, and Mr. Day may be able to answer this, I noted during their application that they relied on York Township assessor estimated assessed valuation figures. Why in this case did the applicant not rely on a member of the Appraisal Institute? Is there some reason for that you can tell the Plan Commission members that relates to that decision? To the extent that the data provided by Mr. Day at the prior hearing indicated and supports what Mr. Dungan stated earlier in his testimony about the comparative assessed valuations of his home at 270 and his neighbor's home at, I believe, 266. That essentially admits an impact on value caused by what you're about to see in these slides. But has a certified appraiser or a member of the Appraisal Institute provided a report on this? Did the applicant ever attempt to find comparable properties for an analysis of what the impact on value would be if there's a parking lot next door that serves a bar, a restaurant that has catering services, delivery services, live entertainment, and outdoor seating and dining that is pretty popular? Is there a comparable situation that the applicant has found anywhere? Did an appraiser attempt to find comparables and report back that they could not find comparables, either in Elmhurst or in a similar community? I'd like to walk you through the slides. Some questions will pop up on this.
Right. Before you do, Mr. Daniels, I'm going to advise you we have 2 more minutes for this meeting. This public hearing is going to be continued. But just be aware that you could start your slides, but you have 2 minutes at this point, and we reached the end of our meeting at 10 p.m.
All right. Why don't we do this? I'll just touch on a couple slides. If you can go about 7 slides in, 8 slides in, past the Bennis memoranda and the Spaceco information. There are a couple Secretary of State reports. You can keep paging through that. It's a trend of development slide. There you go. Thank you. Along Spring Road since 1956, there has been no movement of commercial use to the rear of these lots. Your 2009 comprehensive plan notes it. As a resident, I was involved in several of the meetings concerning the 2009 comprehensive plan, and I've been involved in review of those plans and sub-area plans since 2002. But there has been no movement of C1 use into the residential districts, be it R2 or R4. The red line shown in this exhibit shows a hard line that has been held firmly since 1956. For those that wonder why the homes are there, that's the entry to a neighborhood. It's the entry to a large R2 neighborhood from the Southwest. It is not an island. There is a vast R2 district that this area is a part of. When you take a look at the trend in the area, the blue notes conversion to residential, the green notes conversion of open space next to a business use that was a non-conforming use, but those apartments are residential. You can see to the north, Maida Motors, the car wash, Silverado, and north of there, Kensington. Those are all on the front side of the block. The change in use is to the north. In fact, the railroad since 1956 has been abandoned and converted to open space that is highly beneficial to the area. It is important that you keep that line. If we can go to the next slide.
I'm going to advise you, we really have run out of time.
I can pick it up next time.
That's what I'm going to suggest. I think everyone will be fresh and you'll have a better idea. We don't yet know what the date is. Let me just say to everyone who has had the patience and the perseverance to stick through this, I really appreciate that. I also appreciate everyone's civility in this. This is really important that we do this. This is if you want to know if Elmhurst takes these things seriously, this is a great example. We're not going to rush it. We take it very seriously, and we're going to give it every ounce of consideration and the time that it deserves. So we will hold the public hearing open until, we don't know the date yet, but Eileen will let us know what that date is. I want to invite everybody to please come back, even if you're not going to make any further statement, that's fine. Please do come back. If you're not able, so you know that all of these commission hearings are on YouTube and you can watch them there. They're being recorded and they will be on YouTube. And so that also everyone knows our commissioners going to be able to take in all of this information. We will all be provided with transcripts. That's the beauty of our court reporter. And every commissioner will be reading through all of these transcripts as we've all read through as much as the voluminous material as possible. So, Eileen.
So I do believe we need to continue the meeting to a date certain because the public hearing is open.
Okay.
Our next couple meetings are booked up already with a training for the commission and for other cases. So the next open agenda that we have is March 16th.
Okay. So we will continue this public hearing to March 16th. That will allow all of us even more chance to read all the information. I compliment all the neighbors for all of the written material that they have put in. I think that's, I'm gonna mute you. For all of that material, and we will have some opportunity to look at that and take all of this really seriously and come up with a good decision. I appreciate the comment that we got some pretty smart people involved in here. I will just tell you, Elmhurst is full of a lot of very smart people who really care about their community, and that's one of the beauties that we have here. So we will then hold this public hearing open until March 16th. Commissioner Burns.
Yes. Chair Rose, just a quick couple procedural questions. One is whether the slides that Mr. Daniel was putting up will be put to board docs so we can review it more carefully.
Yes, they will.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, we're getting some feedback. The slides from Mr. Daniel will be added to board docs, and there may be a couple other emails that have come in since the meeting started or shortly before that will be added to board docs as well.
So the public record is still open, and so these are all the things that we will be considering. Mr. Burns, Commissioner Burns.
Second question. So since Mr. Buss was presented as a testifying expert, it did occur to me that I had a question or two for him if that would be appropriate and if he would be available or if I should submit it in writing and he could respond and it could be added to the public record. How would that work?
You anticipated my next comments. I was going to ask that Mr. Buss be available at that next meeting, really, so that we can ask questions of him, so that, and if that's not possible, we'll let you know, but that it would be our request is that he be made available at that meeting on March 16.
Oh, you might be at the Bondies, though.
What?
Go ahead.
Am I on?
Yes, you could talk.
I'll be traveling back from Florida at that point in time. I'd appreciate if it could be in writing. I could respond in writing or possibly do it in transit.
Let's try for writing. If we can, Commissioner Burns, if you can get some of those questions actually fairly quickly, and then we can all have the advantage of that as well. So, okay. All right. We will not close a public hearing, but we will have a motion to adjourn. Can I have a motion and a second to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Pittman and a second.
Second.
Commissioner Garland, correct? Yes. Okay. Eileen, will you call the roll on the motion to adjourn?
Thank you. Commissioner Pittman.
Yes.
Commissioner Garland.
Yes.
Commissioner Burns.
Yes.
Commissioner Callaway.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy.
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder.
Yes.
Commissioner Ditsky.
Yes.
Chair Rose.
Yes, thank you. We are adjourned, and thank you to everyone from the community and all the commissioners. And we will meet again on this item on March 16th. We're adjourned.